Let's go live to CNN international reporter, diplomatic editor, indeed, Nick Robertson. He joins us now. I think you're in Riyadh, Nick. Yes, you are. A lot of interest in what is going on there at the moment. We can hear a fair bit of activity behind you. I think it's interesting over the weekend that we have seen more missile strikes against the Gulf states, even though there seemed to be some kind of apology out of Iran.
Yeah, and I think everyone here, when that apology came, was thinking, oh, this is possibly a pathway, an off-ramp here. But, you know, they sat tight, they waited to see what happened, and they were disappointed because the president of Iran's words, Pezeshkian's words, didn't carry any water, didn't carry any weight, because within hours the missiles were falling. They were falling on a university in Bahrain, a desalination plant in Bahrain, in fuel storage tanker capacity at the civilian international airport in Kuwait, at a Kuwaiti government building. Here in Riyadh, there were multiple drone attempts around the capital, Riyadh. We hadn't seen that before. Today, there's been multiple ballistic missile attempts on the Prince Sultan Air Base, which is just outside the capital here. So what has actually happened, what the Saudis have seen, is that the Iranian president's words don't carry weight. And in the past few hours, they've witnessed what is in effect a hardliner with the backing of the IRGC become the new supreme leader in Iran. None of it augurs well. None of it hints at an off-ramp and hints at a continuation.
Yeah, it certainly does. The 4 to 5 week timeline that Trump sets down looks unlikely to be reached. This seems like it is going to be something that is long and drawn out. Nick, it might be hard to tell from right now, but as the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia included, gets drawn into this war as they are targeted by Iran, I mean, I think the calculation from Iran might be that they get sick of it, put pressure on the US to pull back. But is that an underestimation as well from Iran?
Look, it is an incredibly sensitive and difficult time for Saudi Arabia. Today they've announced their first civilian fatalities. An Indian national, a Bangladeshi national were killed in a projectile strike. 12 Bangladeshis injured in that strike. And today also we had the first announcement of the first US fatality here, a US service member in Saudi Arabia, injured on the first night of attacks, March the 1st, and died of severe injuries just today. We don't have any information about where precisely that happened. Were there any other casualties, injuries involved at the time? So it begs a lot of questions about, you know, the scale and scope of the ability of Iran to get through with some of its targeting. But I think, look, I think there has perhaps been a perception in some parts in the United States, in Israel, that Saudi Arabia and perhaps the other Gulf states would very quickly sort of align themselves with the United States and join the United States. But I have to say, being here, talking with Saudi officials, they continue to say they don't want to get drawn into the war. They feel it's the United States war, it's Israel's war, not their war. Are they putting diplomatic pressure on the United States not to escalate the situation? At the moment, they're trying to sort of withstand and intercept the barrages that are coming their way. And the hard reality is, if Iran was to escalate further and land some devastating impacts on critical oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia, that really could draw them towards the war. But the perception in Saudi Arabia is it is the United States war, President Trump's war, Israel's war, and if the Gulf states get drawn in, they could get drawn into a drawn-out conflict. And then President Trump, the fear would be here, is that he could walk away and they'd be left themselves fighting a war. They don't want the damage. They don't want the economic cost. You know, just take Saudi Arabia, for example, Vision 2030 of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, a huge economic vision for employment diversification away from hydrocarbons. 2034, they're supposed to be hosting the Olympics. They've got an expo here, I believe it's next year or the year after, that's going to last about 6 months. There's major economic investment underway here. That's the vehicle how Saudi Arabia and the Gulf wants to project its way forward. So all of this war is counter to those interests. At the moment, they're managing to stand on the sidelines, but as the war gets drawn out and lasts longer, they are going to see their oil products. They're not going to be able to. They're going to have to scale down production because they don't have the place to store their products if they can't get it out through the Straits of Hormuz, which realistically is beyond the scope and scale of the US military to do quickly, effectively, and easily. Because although you can sink Iran's navy, as we saw back in 2019, and I was out in the Straits of Hormuz there watching what was happening, where it just took a small Iranian speedboat to stick a couple of magnetic mines on the side of tanker vessels, and holes were blown in the side of them. Fires were started. So it's very hard to open that waterway. So all of this contributes to a very negative picture at the moment. If you want to put it in these terms, there's a feeling that the Gulf is getting closer to the edge of the precipice, knows what it likes to look over the edge, but now finds itself leaning over and looking down and seeing what's coming, and it's not pretty.
You had great analogy, Nick Robertson. Appreciate you live there in Riyadh talking to us this morning. See you soon.